Oh, now you should be able to hear me. Good morning. Good morning to you as well. I am extraordinarily excited today. We are closing on a package of 20 properties. It's technically 18 locations, but one of the properties is a 3-unit. So under normal circumstances, I would not buy this 3-unit, but it's part of this package. We got a great deal on all of the units, and the 3-unit actually is probably the most immaculate of all the properties. New roof, new mechanicals, new flooring. It's on a slab as well, so that makes it pretty maintenance free. They are so they each about 544 square feet. I shouldn't have said about. They are 544 square feet per unit. So they're small, but they're kind of bulletproof. I guess not. Well, maybe. I was about to say I guess not physically, but they are brick. So pretty close. Thanks, Greg. Happy to see you live here in the chat, all the way from Utah. So Ohio misses you, man. Ohio misses you. So any sort of questions? I made a nicer description this time. So in the description of the chat, I put the Wealthy Gardener link because I think that's a book that everyone should read. And then I also put the Prop Stream link, of course. I think it's really helpful. And then a link to all of the books that I've read, because I've heard from a lot of people that is a helpful list of books. So, hey, I am one person, and those are the books that I've read. I don't necessarily recommend all of them, but when I was first starting out trying to figure out how to change my life, I really wished that somebody that had successfully changed their life actually kept a record of all of the books that they had read, because everyone says read, you should read, and even Warren Buffett at one point, I think he said that he spent eight hours a day reading because knowledge is compounding, but he never really says what he reads. So I would have really appreciated that had he been so kind to share it. I think so too. So what kind of questions do people have? Any questions at all? If not, let's see. What can I update you on? The firehouse is occupied. I owe a video for that. That people are moving in on Saturday. We collected the deposit. It's rented out for $1,200 a month. And they're moving in this Saturday. And then one of the properties right across the street from the firehouse came up for sale. So we have that under contract, and we are closing on that one next Friday. So that's exciting. So we'll have 2 properties in that neighborhood. Pretty pumped about that. And once we close on that property next week, that's going to put us up to 131 properties. And this will be the first time in 2.5 years that we have not had any properties under contract or on our radar. So we are taking a very slight strategic pause to get our 130 units up to speed, get them all performing. We have about 14 properties vacant at the moment. So a little bit higher than 10%. Now that includes our rehab projects, and it also includes the properties that people just moved out of and just normal turns. So we've gotten our turn time down pretty tight. We flipped 1 unit inside of a week. That felt good, or turned 1 unit rather than flip. So we turned a unit inside of a week. That was good. And our monthly loss at the moment, this is the number that I'm trying to really focus in on because it's such a painful number. But the 14 properties that we currently have vacant, our monthly loss is $12,250. So that does not feel good. So we are feverishly trying to fix that, and I really want to monitor that metric very closely, because that's just all of that. We're still paying our expenses, so all of that income would fall straight to the bottom line if we were to get these properties performing. I don't know. That's a good question, but I don't know of anyone outside of the Federal Reserve that knows this number. But hey, I'll tell you what, though, this is not something that I worry about. I said this. I say this, I think, probably once per live stream, it seems like. But at all periods in time, in all markets, there have been real estate investors making money investing in real estate. And historically, I mean, you can look at interest rates. I think they range from like 0 to 1%, all the way up to like 18% in the 70s. And that was on secured real estate. So all things considered, from a macro kind of point of view, historically speaking, we're on the lower side of interest rates at the moment. So long as you run your numbers appropriately, so long as you're in a decent market, so long as you do all of your due diligence, a lot of increase can be taken on interest rates, and there will still be people out there making money. So you might have to pivot your business model. You might have to change some things around. But by and large, I think you shouldn't worry about things like this too much. You should just try and plan for them as much as you can in the future. It's very similar to like gas prices. Whether you are a fan of the gas prices or not, you still have to drive around places, right? Sure, you might alter your routes. You might not go on as many casual drives, but nonetheless, you will still operate your vehicle. I kind of view things like this in the same light. Sure, interest rates might increase, interest rates might decrease, but we still have a destination that we're going to, regardless of these fees. Sure, we're going to pivot. Our business model might change. We might take some different actions, but by and large, we're still going to be moving forward. We're still going to be hopping in our car, and we're still going to be going places. Even if the market were to, if this housing market were to burst, so to speak, and housing prices were to fall a lot, we would still be buying. We'd still be holding. We'd still be buying. If prices increase, we're still going to be buying, and we're still going to be holding. I think if you were to take these real estate assets, these property values, and look at them all from a numbers perspective, like if this were a stock market and you had all these stock market people, you think about what these people say during a recession or upturn, right? If the market is doing a phenomenal job, then everybody, these stock market people are going to tell you that you need to be putting in any dime that you can spare into the market because it will multiply. And in the downturn, they're going to tell you that you need to start dollar cost averaging and you need to continually put money in. I don't think you should view real estate any different. I think if anything, you should buy properties, albeit on the upside or the downside. But hey, take all that for a grain of salt. Let me throw out my disclaimer, because at the end of the day, I have yet to live through a market downturn. You guys can hear me. Let's see here. Thanks. I appreciate it. When doing an off-market deal in a state without a requirement to use an attorney, can you just have a title agency draft the offer/sales contract? You know what? I think this is probably a good question, but I don't really know what it means. I don't know what kind of state Ohio is, but I think I guess so. A title company will likely have a boilerplate template on hand that you could use. I've drafted up my own purchase/sale agreements and got them signed and sent them over to the title company. I think so long as you use a title company, you're likely going to be fine. Cool story, man. If so, when would you need an attorney to get involved in the sale? Our title company has a in-house attorney. The only time that they get involved is to draft up a mortgage. So when we're using our private investors and we make the promissory notes, and then we have the attorney draft up the mortgage. That's recorded with the county. Other than that, just as far as like a purchase goes, I guess Ohio is a state that doesn't require this purchase contract to be drafted by an attorney because, man, I think you could. I think two people could. Man, I don't know. I don't understand half of the things that you're saying. So, single families is what I do. I don't do commercial real estate. If you want to learn about commercial real estate, then go somewhere and listen to people about commercial real estate. But I'm a one-trick pony. I buy single family homes. That's what I do. If you don't do that, if you're not interested in it, then go ahead and hop off, man. It's all good. I'm trying to purchase my first investment property, but I'm new to this. What are the key things that I will need? Hey, Aaron, first off, good work. I think you're already ahead of the game by thinking that you want to do this. So your first investment property, I think the most important part is just laying the proper foundation. So if you are interested in buying investment properties, then you want to go ahead and kind of hedge your bets against the downside. So you definitely don't want to lose any money. So the way that you lose money in real estate is by not appropriately planning for the things that could potentially go wrong on a property. If you do your due diligence, you're going to want to figure out like what the condition of the property is. So how long does the roof have left? How long does the mechanicals have? Is there any sort of deferred maintenance on the property? What kind of condition is the plumbing in? Because the last thing you want is to purchase a property, you have somebody move in, and then they uncover like several $1,000s worth of maintenance. Now, I hope that you have a kind of healthy reserves. I think depending on the market that you're in, depending on the purchase price, depending on the cost of labor or contractors, then I would say you probably don't want to buy your first investment property if you have like less than $10,000 on hand set aside. And that's, to be clear, that's funds that aren't used for like the down payment or the acquisition of a property. And if you do that, then I think you're probably going to be good as far as like the things that could go wrong with the property. Because what I see people doing the most and where I see people really get hurt is they use all of their cash on hand to get into a property. And then they have, some sort of plumbing issue or some unexpected event happen that costs a couple grand. Because having insurance is extraordinarily important, but there are a lot of things that insurance does not cover. The normal wear and tear stuff. If you had a furnace go out, if you have, some sort of like plumbing issue that happens, it's likely not going to be covered by insurance. So you definitely want to have an appropriate amount of reserves. And then other than being financially prepared, you just want to be prepared from like an educational level. So you definitely want to read all of the books about real estate that you can. You're going to want to listen to all the podcasts, a bunch of YouTube folk, kind of like me, and figure out what you're going to most be interested in. Because the cool thing about real estate investing, in my opinion, is that there are a lot of different ways to make money. I think there are just as many ways to make money inside of real estate investing as there are real estate investors. So I am a huge fan of single family homes. That is all I would like to own. We have a couple of 4 units, a couple of duplexes, and a handful of like 3 units. But by and large, my favorite are single families, and that's just my personal preference. There's no real right or wrong. I know a lot of people that, buy trailer parks, do like some sort of like land flipping, commercial real estate is a real thing that people make money on. I think different types of real estate are appealing to different personalities, and it's all about what type of problems you want to deal with on a daily basis. For me, I prefer single families because they are very kind of laissez-faire. There's no kind of intra-tenant drama. There's a lot fewer responsibilities on my part. So I don't have to worry about like the landscaping. I don't have to worry about snow removal. I don't have to pay any of the utilities. All of that falls on the occupant of the single family home. So there's that. With the commercial real estate, you have commercial tenants right now inside this pandemic thing. I don't know much about the commercial real estate landscape. On the multifamily space, you've got, the potential for one bad resident to kind of mess up the experience or the attitudes of the other people that live in that same building. Now, I imagine, the largest property that I own is a 4-unit. I imagine that a lot of these issues kind of disappear the larger the property becomes. So if it's like a 100-unit apartment building, then I don't think I think you could probably isolate a lot of the issues on that front, unlike just the residents there not really liking each other. But then you just have to budget for the appropriate utilities and whatnot. So all that to say, educate, read a bunch, expose yourself to all the different avenues of real estate investing, figure out which one appeals to you the most, and then just go ahead and get started. So for me, I started researching real estate investing in I would say November or December of 2016. And we didn't buy our first property until August of 2017. So that was a lot of reading, a lot of listening to places like Bigger Pockets. I used to commute between Ohio and North Carolina. So we moved to Ohio from North Carolina, and I moved before my wife and child did. So I drove about 18 hours a week, I think, and I listened to a lot of podcasts during that time, during that round trip. So I would start educating yourself there. Lines of credits are risky. Let's see here. Why do I do singles instead of apartments? Yeah, for those reasons. So I don't like apartments because I really don't want to deal with the drama between the tenants. And I also don't want to pay utilities. I don't want to do snow removal, and I don't want to pay somebody to mow the lawn during the summers. So I imagine if you were in a place like Florida, Arizona, where there's not snow removal, that would take away a lot of the liability risk. But I mean, here, if you've got one of these slip and falls, and I have an insurance background, so I'm just not a fan of that. I think that if that weren't there, that liability risk, and me constantly having to do that and make sure that these things are safe, then I would be a little bit more open to it. But it really just makes sense, in my opinion, to have single family homes just because of how laissez-faire they are. And I mean, since we've been buying properties, we have had just a handful of turns, whereas the people that I know that are in multifamilies, they constantly have turns. I think just the demographic of the people that live in apartments, at least in this area, inside the Rust Belt, inside the Midwest, it's a more transient community. Whereas in the single family home space, I mean, we have a property where the guy has lived there for over 30 years now. So it's just a more stable asset, in my opinion. And I get that the buzzword for apartments are things like economies of scale. And I just don't quite buy it. I think the profit margin inside of single family homes is a lot higher because you don't have all of the owner responsibilities. So And again, the biggest unit that I own is a 4-unit. So if you were to have like a 100-unit, perhaps a lot of this would fade away, and perhaps it would be easier because you have, on-site property management that does everything all day long. But that's not, there aren't many 100-unit buildings in this area. I think out west, there are a lot more of these massive apartment areas, or in hotter markets, a lot of these things are being built, but we don't have many here. We have like entire streets full of 4-unit buildings, but not many others. Hey man, I'm happy to see you back. How's your real estate stuff going? And then personal lines of credit, to answer this question more completely. I think the lines of credits are a little bit more risky. From all of the people that I have had lengthy conversations with that have lived through a downturn, I think that lines of credits are one of the first things to get called in the event of a downturn. Now, these are business lines of credits that I'm referring to, but I'm always a little bit leery of lines of credit. We have a couple lines of credits, and we are extraordinarily careful with them. We generally treat our lines of credits just like we treat our private investors. We do first position mortgages. So it's one property at a time that we would easily be able to either sell that asset or refinance that asset if that line of credit is ever called. So I would not be a fan of utilizing a line of credit for like your normal maintenance things or things that aren't tied to the asset. I think that's how you get kind of over leveraged pretty quickly. And the one thing that you want to be sure of is that you always have, your assets are always a lot larger than your liabilities. So you never want to be over leveraged. Even though our business model revolves around, we borrow 100% of the purchase price and the rehab costs, we're also buying the majority of our properties at a pretty deep discount. So a lot of times we'll buy properties for 40 grand that appraise for, 70 to 80 grand. So even though, let's say we're all in on the property for 50 grand, we have an asset that's worth 75 to 80. So in the event of a downturn, we could stand for the market to decrease by 30% or so, and we still wouldn't be upside down. So minding that ratio is extraordinarily important. And if you introduce too many lines of credits, you're going to kind of have this false feeling of comfort as far as your liquidity goes. And you just want to be very, very, very prudent about that. Thanks, man. Thanks. Let's see here. Any other questions? Oh, I missed you, Tolu. Good morning. I hope things are going a little bit better for you. Have you put any offers in on any properties, or are you still throwing, 50 grand over asking and getting denied? Cool, man. Oh, that was good. That was a fun time. Yeah. I have read, so we have one of our private investors is from Utah. So I have read, for whatever reason, some of Utah stuff as well. And let's just say that it's something in Utah's water as to why their legal documents are so tricky. I got really stumped on their, so, in most investors' due diligence, they come up with very unique questions. They will take our documents back to their attorneys, and they will, ask their attorneys for feedback and stuff, which is super helpful. It helps make me a better person. But this particular guy and his attorney came back at me with questions about like usury laws and how I could justify paying 10 or 12% on the usury laws, cap things at, 8% or 6% or whatever state. Every state has their own, usury law standards or whatever. And, usury laws do not apply to secured loans, especially I think mortgages backed by real estate are exempt from usury laws, is what we ultimately determined. So long as the mortgage is recorded, you're kind of exempt from that. Plus, a lot of usury laws are specifically person to person. not business to business. So a lot of times we structure our deals from one LLC to another. That way we avoid some, what do they call it, litigation or whatnot. All right. Streamyard. Thank you, Streamyard, I've never seen this before, for providing this platform. And if you guys are YouTubers, go ahead and check out Streamyard. Start hosting some live streams. Thoughts on doing lease to own properties? I'm 50 years old, so not sure I will be here for the 30 years of holding a property. I'm a teacher and coach and real estate agent on the side. Thanks, Jeb Stewart. Good for you, man. 80. Don't sell yourself short. 80 is young, like a spring chicken at 80. When I lived in North Carolina, my wife and I went to church with two guys that were in their mid 90s, and they started feeling tired. So they started going to the gym together on a daily basis. And one guy, I think it was for his 95th birthday, went skydiving. So he is the largest, oldest person that I've ever seen. So a lot of the older people that I know in the 90s and 100 range, they're very small, slight fellas. And as a larger individual myself, I've always been like, man, being this big really limits your longevity. But this guy gave me hope because he was 95 and he was a big boy. As far as lease to own properties, I don't know. I've never done one. I'm not interested in doing them. I've really been turned off by this whole concept when I looked into it. So there are a few things. I mean, you pointed out the main reason that I don't want to really do them is I want to give a lot of these properties to my children. As many of you know, I've got 4 of them. So even though our portfolio seems big between my brother and I's children, I think it really dwindles down really quickly. So we want to hold on to these properties for an extraordinarily long amount of time, maybe even over 100 years. Who knows? So we don't really want to sell anything. I made a vow to myself a couple of years ago that I would never do anything again that only paid me once. And I try to live by that. So selling a property is one of those things that would pay me only once. The lease to own, when I talk to a lot of people that do lease to own, the reason that I was turned off by it is if you're not careful, it is an extraordinarily predatory business to get into. I mean, a lot of the people that are in the lease to own program are because they can't go through a traditional bank. And right now, banks don't really have, I mean, they're being pretty flexible because money is so readily available. So it's not like we live in one of these downturns where no bank is lending to anyone with like less than an 800 credit score. So we're not in that time frame. If we were in that time frame, perhaps my tone would change a little bit. A lot of times these lease to own investors will, and I call them predatory because they will take very large down payments and they will write the contract in a manner where if that person is ever late on a payment, then they forfeit kind of like the equity on it. And then if they are ever, I think, late twice or 3 times, then it converts back to a normal lease. They lose their down payment, and now they're just renters. But they're still responsible for the maintenance of the property. So the whole goal from one of the lease to own people that I talked to was he had it to where there was like a balloon payment in 10 years. They put probably 10 to 15% down, and he had it all mapped out. And this is where this is the main reason I got really turned off. He had it mapped out to where the amortization schedule over the 10 years. So the balloon payment was in 10 years. they would not have greater than 25% equity into the property. And I guess that was the magic number here in Ohio, that if it's a lease to own contract and the resident has greater than 25% equity, then you have to do, just like a bank would, you would have to do a full-on foreclosure of the property. Whereas if there's less than 25% equity, then it's just a normal eviction, which takes, 3 weeks. So the foreclosure process takes a couple months. The eviction takes a couple of weeks. So he had it mapped out to where he knew that these people wouldn't be able to make the balloon payments because, their credit was not one that anyone would ever lend to them on. And he somehow, assumed that they wouldn't fix it during that 10-year time frame. So that's why I strongly dislike it. Yeah, and I think the sad truth of it is, I don't know. Like, how to fix your credit. Information on that is readily available. How to increase your revenue. Books on that are readily available. I am extraordinarily empathetic. I have a huge heart for people that need help. But I don't necessarily think that stepping in and giving a lease to own option to somebody that can't afford traditional financing. I say afford as in like their credit history, their current balance sheet, stuff like that. I don't think helping them in a manner of getting them into a house where they're going to have an increased exposure because now they're responsible for all the things that could potentially go wrong with the house. I don't think that is what those type of people need. I think what they really need is some financial education, some planning, some beginning stuff on like self-improvement, some teaching, some quick and dirty teaching on capitalism, how it works, how you can add more value, how you can get paid more, how to save money, how the appropriate way to view money. I think that is what is missing in the majority of the community that can't, get approved for a home. And, if you really mess up your credit, it takes 7 years to, fix it. But from one of the Dave Ramsey surveys that I remember, he said, and I'll try to find this article too, because I've been trying to quote it a lot. The average person that sets out to become a millionaire, on average, it takes them about 7 years. So you could do a lot of improvement in your financial setting over the course of 7 years while you're looking to get qualified to purchase a home. And, at some point, everybody kind of has to look at themselves and all their past decisions in the mirror, come to terms with them and improve on them, or remain forever in their current position. So all that to say, I can relate to the empathy. I can relate to the desire to help, but I definitely think it's extraordinarily prudent to help people in the most sustainable manner possible. And I'm not so sure getting them a house. It's kind of like adding fuel to the fire, in my opinion. I try, man. I declare bankruptcy. You can't just say the word bankruptcy and expect anything to happen. Is the bubble a myth? Why do people say the real estate market is going to crash and is overpriced? I wouldn't say that the bubble is a myth. The housing prices are just going to correct. Let's say just like any market, right? Like right now, I think here in this area, prices are up like 30% over the past like 12 to 24 months. So, they might come back down 15, 20%. Just like the stock markets, the values on properties, the ebbs and flows of the marketplace are definitely a real thing. I think a national bubble is a myth. I think the same housing issues that California faces are not the same housing issue that Ohio faces. I would say that it's improper to say that the housing market is going to crash, because the housing market, it's not like one stock. It's not like if Apple, that company crashes, then all the Apple shareholders are going to feel it. The housing market is not one homogenous nationwide glob. If the housing prices in California plummet, that says very little for what's going to happen in Montana, right? Now, there are a lot of like economical things that tie together. Like if the economy as a whole are down and the national employers, the large national employers, all suffer a hit, like an Amazon or something, then sure, even in Montana, the Amazon distribution centers, if Montana even has those might lay some people off. But hopefully in Montana, Amazon distributor centers aren't so large of an employer that it's going to have an equal effect as, say, an Amazon distribution center in New York. So it's not one thing. It's not going to affect all areas the same. And the one thing to take note about the housing market prices is real estate. Like I mentioned earlier, there's tons of different variables, facets of real estate investing, and they're all kind of independent of each other. Like right now, I know commercial real estate might be discounted, even though residential real estate is increasing, because commercial, this whole thing that our nation is currently going through, has closed down a lot of businesses, and now remote work is becoming more popular. So that aspect of the commercial real estate stuff is taking a hit, whereas residential is booming because now people don't have to show up to work. People spend their whole day in their homes working remotely. And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other variables, but all that to say, even the market prices for what you can sell a property for exist independently from the rental market and what you can rent a property for. And back in 2008, according to the people that I've talked to that were investing throughout 2008, is throughout the entire time that the housing prices were falling, there was still a need for residential rental properties. And they did not have an increase in vacancies during the housing crash. And even though rental rates did not go up, they also didn't go down. So just because a property is worth, 40% of what it was a couple months ago, it's still rented out for the same amount of dollars per month. And there was still a person willing to move into that property. So I don't think it's a myth, but I think it's largely misapplied or misunderstood. And I don't think that the people that are spouting out things about the housing bubble and how it's going to crash, I would be curious to see how many of those people are real estate investors with sizable portfolios. So I will say that my brother and I went to a real estate investing conference a couple weeks ago down in Georgia. And I got to meet some really cool people. Some people that I met, they built 35 homes per month. Another group of people that I met owned 14,000 residential units. And another person that I met owned like 11,000 single family homes, all in one market. And we, spoke of a lot of concerns, and none of them were a housing bubble. Man, you are hyped up this morning. I've seen you on here before, but you have never been this talkative. So thanks. Thanks for contributing a lot. Oh, I see why that's funny. Your username is Michael Scott, and your logo is Michael Scott's face, and you're declaring bankruptcy. You're a silly rascal, Michael Scott. All right, 18 people in the chat. I am pretty pumped up because, there's 18 of you on here. That's a good classroom. Good classroom of people. So any real estate questions you might have, any things you might want to talk about revolving around real estate or personal finance, go ahead and throw some questions down below, and I will do my best to answer those things. Let's see what I have to talk about. Tolu, I'm still waiting on the answer. Let's see. I mentioned a few things, but I just wanted to check. So we currently have 11 properties under renovation and a total of 15 vacancies. And I was wrong when I said earlier that our total monthly loss was 12,250. It is in fact 13,000, and even 13,000. Before this, our rule of thumb is that we would never have more than 10 properties under renovation at one time. So now I guess it makes sense that our current largest pain point to get all these back on the market is the bandwidth of our contractors. So I just bought the Ohio house and it's being renovated. Nice, man. Congratulations. Do you want to share the numbers? You are hilarious. My partner wants to get married. I say no, it will hurt our portfolio overall. I don't think that's entirely true. They could buy a property, then we get married. Thoughts? Man, marriage is a beautiful thing. Marriage is much more important than real estate investing. Oh, man. Treat them right first and then build an empire together. Accept any of the obstacles that are a result of building a real estate, getting married, and then trying to build a real estate portfolio. I would much rather be in the position that I'm in with my wife than twice the position with some lady that is not my wife. I really love my wife, though. I'm super thankful for her. I'm very happy we got married. And we've got some awesome kids together, and she's a fantastic mother. She is much more important than any of the properties that I could possibly ever own. And I do not care if a bank would see me as a more viable borrower as a single person. I would say I will wait. You're silly, man. That's such a silly thought. I get what you're saying. I know one couple that has done this. They bought 2 rental properties before they got married because she was a W-2 employee of his business, and if they were married, she would be seen as one of the owners rather than a true W-2 employee. So they wouldn't have lent to her. So, he temporarily increased her salary, made some purchases, and then they got married after the purchases were, solidified. But long term, real estate investing is one of these 30, 40, 50-year journeys. It will matter very little in that time frame. It might matter a lot in the next 12 to 18 months, but not long term. Too many, Greg. Too many. I'm working on cleaning them up now. I'm not being vague about it. I really don't know the number. It's too many. Would you suggest getting a real estate license? No, I mean, I don't have a real estate license, so there's that. And one of the main reasons I love meeting realtors, and I love, utilizing realtors as a means to increase my deal flow. So the more realtors I meet, the more people I have the ability to tell my exact buying criteria to. The more people, in theory, are out there thinking of me first whenever they are approached by somebody that wants to sell a property. So we've gotten a lot of pocket listings where somebody's like, hey, I might be interested in selling my property. And the realtor would be like, well, I might know somebody that wants to buy it. So they'll, text or call me and say, would you be interested in this if this were a deal? So I have probably made more money in equity from pocket listings of realtors than I would have saved from the 3% had I become a realtor myself. So really depends on where you're at in life and what you're attempting to do. If you want to sell properties as a means to generate revenue, then go for it. But at the same time, long-term wealth, building a portfolio, I think it also matters very little if you have your license or not. Let's see here. Thank you for listening, Kevin. I really appreciate it. What things do you look at to determine what the real estate market is doing in your area? I think so. I think that's a really good question, and I was in law enforcement in Durham, North Carolina. When I first started in law enforcement in Durham, you could buy any house in East Durham for like 5, 10, maybe 15 grand. It was a rough area. And then when I left about 5 to 6 years later, you couldn't even buy one of the condemned homes for less than 100 grand. And the homes in like on one of the worst streets was renovated and selling for about 215,000. So I got to kind of see that firsthand and really be in the weeds of it because, I was in law enforcement and constantly in those areas in an intimate way. So then when I moved here to Dayton, it was very reminiscent of, circa $5,000 East Durham. When I first moved up here, we bought our first fully rented out duplex for $35,000, and it just felt very similar. So when I first moved here, having seen firsthand how Durham turned itself around, I wanted to see community buy-in, city programs, roadmaps, or just a heavily motivated city staff wanting to put in resources to improve the community. I wanted to see them put some sort of foot forward on attracting new companies and also giving back to like the local universities of the place. So it really comes down to a lot of city planning. But once you feel like you have the city's buy-in, and once you have a community that is for the city, then I think it's just a matter of time that together they will turn that area around. Because, if you've got one investor that wants to turn an area around, depending on the size of that investor, if you've got a company that's going to come in like a hedge fund and buy, blocks at a time and rehab all of them, then sure, that might be possible without the city's support. But by and large, no area can be turned around by the hands of, a few. It really takes the city, probably some special committees and whatnot. And when I moved up here to Dayton, I saw all of that. The city had like a pretty big vision. There were a lot of community action groups kind of popping up throughout the area for different sectors of the city, and just brainstorming regularly on how to improve that area. And then at the time, the city was also kind of giving away properties to help solve their issues. So at one point, the city of Dayton had, I think, like 30% of their housing stock was vacant. And consequently, a lot of those owed massive amounts of back taxes. So the city was being proactive and saying, if the property was vacant for 2 years, if it was at least 2 years delinquent on taxes, and if the utilities were off, then you could do like a board of revisions foreclosure on the property. And they would deed the property over to you, wipe away the back taxes and any liens on the property, and deed you a free and clear property. The total cost was about $2,500. But that was a really good program. And that really cleaned up a lot of the not too far gone vacancies throughout the city. So programs like that are really helpful for the efforts. And then just having a bunch of community support and city support. I would not be too thrilled on investing in an area where either of those were not there. And I think it's pretty apparent to see an area that was completely forgotten by the city. Bought for, let me count those zeros, 130,000, renovations at 7,000, rental estimated at 1,300 to 1,500 a month. Nice. Shoot for 1,500. I actually had a lengthy conversation with another investor about this not too long ago. The market is so extraordinary at the moment that I think from the rental front, you should really pad your numbers. And when you first list a property for rent, I think you should do so too high. I think you should go for a number that you think is unrealistic, but would be sweet if you got it. And then let it sit for a week.
If you get 0 inquiries, then you likely want to lower it. If you get 10 to 15 inquiries, then you're probably working with something. If you got 0 inquiries, I would drop it by like $100. If you got 10 to 15 inquiries but no qualified applicants, then I would drop it by like 50, just to move things along. But I don't think there is any downside of asking for $1,500 or even $1,600 to start and just see what happens. Good work. Sounds like a good job. No, I haven't, and I wouldn't. I don't think you need a franchise to manage your own properties, and I wouldn't recommend that you get into property management in Ohio or anywhere else. I don't want to regularly beat up on property managers. I'm sure there are some that exist out there that are really good. But for the vast majority of property managers, I don't have a problem with them. I have an issue with the business model as a whole. And I do not think that property management is a sustainable business model. I think it's one kind of predicated on quantity. And if you are a business model that's dependent on quantity, then, it's kind of like the Walmart effect, right? Quality will surely go at some point. Is there a reason why homes assessed differs compared to the market value? Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to pay taxes on the market value of a property. The tax assessed value should always be significantly lower. It's like this constant thing of when you're trying to sell your property, you want it to sell for absolutely as much as possible. But then once you own it, you want it to be worth as little as possible so that you aren't taxed, out the wazoo, so to speak. So I think this speaks more to like the tax assessed value and how that system is kind of either outdated or broken, or how their tax rates would be absurd if they go off market value rather than the assessed value. The assessed value, I don't know enough about this to say much more than what I just said, but I'm trying to think hard to see if I have any additional insight or value to provide in this area. And as I'm speaking, I'm drawing more and more blanks and question marks. So I'm just gonna stop, even though I think that was a great question. I think I've reached the end of my utility in this area. I got my license in 18 days. Did it to help my wife, who is an agent, since she has always supported me in my coaching career? How does you getting your license help your wife? Just out of curiosity. It's none of my business. Good job supporting your wife. But how's it help? Are you taking some of her workload or something? Is she sending you leads? Is she such a bang up realtor that she wants to use you to help shoulder her load? And if so, couldn't you have done some of the back office things rather than getting your license? But hey, you did it in 18 days, so it's not like a waste of time or money or anything. It's probably going to pay off in dividends. I'm just thinking out loud here. Let's see here. Do you use Docusign or something like it when submitting an offer? It seems like physical documents would be too slow. Yes, you are correct. So most of the time, I use a realtor when it's on the MLS. If it is not on the MLS, then generally, if it's a wholesaler, the wholesaler has access to Docusign or something similar. If it's not from a realtor or a wholesaler, and it's just me buying it from somebody that I met, then I will mooch off of my insurance agency, because my insurance agency has a program that's comparable to Docusign that I will utilize. So yes, I agree. There was one wholesaler that I worked with. He had a flip phone, and he wanted to meet me every time I bought a property from him. So he would meet me. I would provide the physical paperwork. I would sign it, and then he would take it to the seller and get them to sign it. I hated it so much. I don't know where I was going with that. It's super inefficient. It's super, super frustrating. And it would inevitably have coffee stains and other random liquid marks and just be all crinkled. And the whole thing just was never professional, in my opinion. Really didn't like it. Thank you, man. I appreciate you being on here. The taxes are great. However, you won't find a great investment property for less than $120K. Would you recommend remote investing? I don't have any experience. I am not a fan of out-of-state investing. I think if you do so, all of the people that I know that do out-of-state investing very well regularly come to the area that they are investing in. So the people that I know that live out in California that invest here in Ohio or Florida, anywhere that's not Ohio, the ones that do the greatest of jobs regularly come to the area. And it's a fine line, because if you just have like one or two properties, then, I mean, this is the problem with property management, right? If you want to go that route, because, let's say that you bought a property in Ohio, the average rent here in this area, let's say it's $800. Property management, 10%, that's $80 a month per property that you have. $80, let's say, $20 an hour is a $40,000 a year salary. If you're a business owner, if you're not really striving to make, $40,000 a year. So let's say you pay yourself $40 an hour, that's $80,000 a year. So that's 2 hours of time per month that you could spend on your property before you start losing money. And this is why it's a quantity thing, because people will immediately hear that and say, well, yeah, but if you have 250 of these, 250 times 80, that's a lot of monthly income. But yeah, now you're talking about a bandwidth issue, because nobody that I know, no one person could run 250 properties. So now you have to hire somebody. And even if you hire them at, $20 an hour, you're still decreasing your bandwidth. I mean, now you're decreasing your revenue. So I'm just saying, you likely won't be able to get the greatest of service. So if you are going to do out-of-state investing, you really need to take ownership of all of the things that you could possibly take ownership of, and depend on your local resources as little as possible, which is very difficult, because you're going to be very far away. So a rule of thumb that I've always told myself, that I have no interest in out-of-state investing, but if I did, I wouldn't enter a market until I had the ability to purchase around 10 properties in that specific area, because at 10 properties, at least you could command a little bit more of someone's time and attention per month than if you just had one. And then you should also be able to start getting some breaks with contractors, and it would really just help in the relationship building aspect. I moved from North Carolina to Ohio to start investing. So what I would recommend, before I recommended out-of-state investing, I would recommend moving to whatever market you wanted to take advantage of. Even if it's just for a couple of years, I think moving would allow you to make a lot more money and a lot more impact a lot quicker than out-of-state investing would. Hey, JJ, happy to see you back, man. Thanks for coming in. I have a situation where I would like an absolute net lease, typically commercial. You're talking about a triple net applied to my residential property. Is this possible? Sure, you can do a triple net. You can do a triple net lease on a property. Don't think I'd recommend it though. I mean, the reason that triple net leases are possible in the commercial space is because generally the people that sign triple net leases have the reputation and the bandwidth um, to really keep their location and have the desire to keep their location free from any deferred maintenance. So those of you that aren't familiar with like a triple net lease, I think that's what you're talking about rather than like an absolute net lease. I've never heard it called that. So you might be talking about something different than what I am speaking of. Triple net lease, the person is responsible for everything from, taxes to maintenance to any of the expenses. They're just truly paying you on a monthly basis for the property. A lot of like Dollar Generals, Blockbusters. Oh, silly brain. What? Don't know why I thought of that company. But a lot of time, okay, let's just stick with Dollar General. Dollar General's, the actual location isn't owned by Dollar General. It's just leased on a triple net lease. And Dollar General maintains the structure. And someplace like Dollar General, they don't want, their banner to be falling off out front or, anything like that. So I don't think I would trust an individual on a residential property to do a triple net lease because you're running a massive risk. Because in theory, Dollar General could absolutely wreck the interior and exterior of that and leave the property owner, a property that needs an entire contract's worth, the face value of that contract worth of damages to the property. Now, Dollar General probably wouldn't do that because their reputation's on the line, and if their property were if that location were in that horrible of shape, then nobody would shop there. But with a residential property on a much smaller scale, I don't think I would trust that because you could be left holding a big bag with zero accountability for it. Helping her with things that I couldn't have done without the license. That's cool, man. I think that's a really good idea. I really enjoy, my wife and I started a business together when she was still a teacher and I was still in law enforcement. And we had a lot of fun doing it together. Then we had kids, but once our kids are in school for the majority of the day, my wife is going to start helping us with stuff again. And I'm really looking forward to that. I like her a lot and I like spending time with her. And I also like working with her. I know that's not always the best idea, but still. What other businesses would you start right now other than real estate? That's a slow start. I just put a pause on my full-time job to start my eBay again. I used to do it and rake in $3,000 a month. I guess e-commerce is a good idea. There's a book called The Millionaire Fast Lane by MJ DeMarco. I would recommend that you do that. I'm a huge fan of what he says to look for in a business. I don't have them memorized, but I would start there. Millionaire Fast Lane, MJ DeMarco. I think that by and large is how I feel about starting businesses. How many houses should I view before purchasing one? I don't think there's a real number on that. Also, how do I determine overvalued property versus undervalued market? Well, Tech J, you're going to love this because it's pretty techy. In the description, there's a link to a free 7-day trial of some software called PropStream. And in that, you can run a pretty detailed comp report. And the comp report, or the comparable sales report, is going to show you the value of the property in question based on the recent sales of similar properties in the past 12 months. And I think there are a lot of different ways to value a property, but when it comes to residential, the 1 to 4 family properties, they are largely 100% of the time based on comp reports. So comparable sales is what dictates the value of your property. If all of the properties around you sell for 20 grand, but you think yours is worth 100 grand, you're probably wrong. Your property is probably worth 20 grand. If it's, comps are largely based on square footage. So whenever you run these comp reports using PropStream, you want to make sure that your square footage is plus or minus 10% on the square foot range. And then after square footage comes bedrooms and baths. You don't want to compare a 4-bedroom to a 1-bedroom or a 3-bath home with a 1-bath home. So square footage first, bedrooms, bathrooms second. And then condition is, somewhere. It might even be on the same level of the bedrooms and bathrooms. Nah, condition is third. So after you filter it by square footage, then bedrooms and bathrooms, you're also going to want to go through and manually look at the photos of the properties and figure out which ones are in the most similar condition to your property. And after you do all of that, you're going to have a really good idea as to what your property is worth. So then you just have to make sure that you do not pay more than that for the property. So let's say you do all that, you determine that your property is worth $100,000. And then you go out and look at the property and you know that it needs a new roof. Well, or you see that it needs a new roof. Well, if that new roof is going to be $10,000, you now don't want to pay more than $90,000 for the property because you know it needs a $10,000 roof. But I would recommend that you also throw in some sort of percentage of equity for yourself. So if you are going to, put in the time, energy, effort of coordinating the roofers to get out there, and with, if you rent it out, coordinating with the tenants to let them know that a roof is going to be replaced, you have to make a little bit of money and get a little bit of meat on the bone for yourself. So I would, come up with some number that would make it worthwhile doing your work. So let's say you determine that that's $5,000. Well, now for your equity, you don't want to pay any more than $85,000 for that property because it needs a new roof. If the person really wants to sell that property for $100,000, then he needs to replace the roof himself. And that's kind of how real estate works. So once you get a true value of the property, now anything that's wrong with the property, you deduct from that true value, and you also make sure that there's enough meat on the bone for you. Because if you experience any hiccups, like you tear off the shingles and you realize that, all the decking needs to be replaced. Well, decking is up a lot because of the whole lumber issue at hand. So that's going to be really expensive. So if you got a quote, in 3 months past and now the OSB or the decking has now quadrupled, you want to leave some meat on the bone so that you dip into your equity, not come out of pocket. I hope that's helpful. So you need to look at as many properties as you possibly can until you find this type of combination that is worthwhile to you. Because what I have found is you've got, especially in the hot market, you've got some really ornery sellers where they're going to say, my property is worth $100,000 and I know it needs a new roof. I know it needs a new bathroom, but I'm selling it for $100,000 and I'm not giving you a dime off of it. Well, now you know that is not a deal that you are interested in because you would only lose money from that deal. Now, there's going to be some poor soul. That's the Southerner in me. There's going to be somebody that comes along and buys that property. But you had the wherewithal to know that it wasn't a good deal based on your valuation of the property and your assessment of the deferred maintenance on the property. So you look at as many properties as it takes for you to find a winning combination. And just like Tolu on the call, I don't know how often you come to these live streams, but Tolu comes to most of them, and she is in a very hot market, and she's been putting like $50,000 above asking offers in and still not getting accepted. So my advice to her is not, to go crazy just to get a deal, because at the end of the day, you really, you have an opportunity to make a lot of money on the purchase, and you have the opportunity to lose a lot of money on the purchase. And as Warren Buffett always says, the first rule of investing is never lose money, right? So as much as you can, take the emotions out of it, take the thrill of looking at properties and wanting properties, and take the thrill of competition if it gets into a bidding war out of it. look at your numbers and don't second guess your numbers. Don't take on a property where you have to do work on and not get paid. And when I say get paid, I mean in equity. So if you have to do work on property, you better be getting some equity built in too. Hope that's helpful. Hey man, who cares if it's a write-off, if it's putting your books in the red? All businesses expenses are a write-off, but I'm not looking to, throw up negatives on a business just for the sake of writing things off. I'm an accidental out-of-state investor. Everything you're saying about property managers makes sense to me. Oh boy. Good luck, Greg. Good morning. I'm an agent in Buffalo, New York, and trying to get started investing. Any tips on acquiring that first property? I think being sound financially is probably the best thing that you can do for yourself as an investor. I know there are a lot of guys on the internet that talk about getting started in real estate with zero money. Hey, it's possible to do, but just be mindful that the larger risk you take on, the more you're exposed. So I would highly encourage everybody interested in investing to absolutely square themselves away on the personal financial front prior to getting started. So you want to have a pretty decent reserve, and you want to really limit your expenses and increase your income as much as possible. Because as much as I love real estate investing, it is very much so a 20 to 30 year game. That's when you're really going to start seeing the benefits of real estate investing, because cash flow is a very, very small percentage of the overall benefits of investing in real estate. So the people that say, hey, I have 10 rental properties and now I'm financially free, I could not disagree more. That's not how reality works, and I would question them very heavily. I think they're spouting a bunch of lies on the internet. And I would not try and emulate them in any way. So having a fat reserve, picking up some side hustles to increase your income, and limiting your personal expenses as much as possible. I think that's probably the most important thing that you can do to set yourself up for investing in real estate. And then after that, I would absolutely go bananas on consuming educational material about real estate investing. I would read all of the books, and I would listen to all of the podcasts. So there's not like one book that will really make it all make sense to you, and there's not one podcast that will answer all of your questions. It is consuming as much information as you possibly can and picking up little tidbits of wisdom here and there. And as you are consuming all of this material, you're going to start picking up patterns, and you're going to start realizing that you have everything that you are hearing, you have also read somewhere else or heard somewhere else. And when you reach that point and you're able to start connecting the dots there, I think you have consumed all of the education that you need to, and now is the time to take massive action. Continue to consume the information because as you start getting into that proverbial arena, you're gonna the information is gonna start hitting you a bit different, and you're gonna start hearing things that you didn't necessarily hear the first time, now that you have experience to cross-reference as well. So getting your own personal financials in order, increasing income, lowering expenses, and setting aside reserves. Educating yourself, probably more than necessary and more than anybody else ever has consumed as far as educational content goes. And then taking massive amounts of action while still consuming content. I think that is how you get started in real estate investing. I missed another key component. Start networking. Start going out of your way to find people that have already built the portfolio that you desire for yourself. And then really get in close with them, befriend them, and even try to make a mentor out of them. And then Now, as you're out there making decisions, trying to connect the dots between what you're seeing and the books that you've read, you can now call on those mentors, your new network that already has the portfolio that you've built, and you're able to ask them questions to make sure that you're on the right track. I think that was probably the most powerful and beneficial thing that I did early on was find mentors. And before I bought any rental properties, I talked to about 3 or 4 guys beforehand and talked to them about the property, the area. I showed them pictures of it to see if I was missing anything. And I think that really allowed me to circumvent a lot of mistakes that most people make from like a trial and error basis. I don't know. I don't do much commercial real estate. As far as outside capital, though, I think all capital raising is about the same. Having a good track record is helpful. That way you can show them that people can trust you with their money. Understanding the SEC rules and regulations, what you can or cannot do. And then other than that, just getting the word out to friends and family or starting a fund to raise money in. I don't know. All of the money that I've raised is from friends and family, and it's secured by first position mortgages on properties. Pretty much a triple net lease, just heard absolute covers absolutely everything in some places. The additional part is with option to buy, and the tenant is very motivated to buy. I don't know, man. That sounds a little sketchy to do in residential properties. I had a little bit earlier where I was talking about the propensity for lease to own options in residential spaces being a little tidbit predatory. And the way you worded that, you know, it's text. There's no tone or facial expressions behind it. I don't know how you meant this, but because I'm looking at this with the angle that I already think lease to own options are predatory, this absolute net thing that you're thinking of strikes me as very predatory. NFTs and real estate. Oh man. There is still so much money to be made out there by real estate, especially for like the small time mom and pop investors like you and I. Now, in the hotter markets, you've got hedge funds that are coming in and buying homes by the thousands, right? So if we lived in a world where all of the homes were owned by hedge funds, and it would be nearly impossible to buy a property as an owner occupant. We're talking like there's a massive machine out there, and we are but cogs in the wheel and never have the ability to own anything. Then I think NFTs would have a place at the table. But right now, I think it is just riding on the curtails of the crypto bull run with very little real world utilization benefits. So I would say screw the NFTs, keep stacking your cash and get into real estate investing. Now, since you're in New York, hey, you might have a bit tougher of a time, but that's going to be my response for now. Our tenant informed us in November that when they were going away. We're going on vacation for 10 days next month. Should we inform them too? If you want to, man. Sounds like you have a pretty good relationship with them, so it won't hurt, especially since you're in the same duplex. So I don't know. Do you have a Ring? Is that a thing where you are? I don't know. We have Wise cameras in our house. They're like the cheapest pseudo security cams that we could possibly have from Amazon. We actually use them as baby monitors too. So we have that we monitor when we go away. You could probably install something like that. And then I don't think it would hurt to tell them you're leaving. Totally up to you. on PropStream and MLS. What's the difference? So PropStream is not the MLS. PropStream is a large, just a massive data aggregator. So PropStream scrapes all the county websites and gets things like the transfer history, who sold it, who bought it. It scrapes the recorder's office. It has the ability to pull documents that are recorded. And PropStream is really just a tool so that like allows you to access an extraordinary amount of information in one spot. So before I learned about PropStream, I used to see properties and I would do a massive, probably like an hour and a half to 2 hours worth of research, going through the county records, going through like the mortgage histories, trying to figure out, who had liens on the property and whatnot. And this was largely in like the pre-foreclosure space, to figure out, what bank was the one that filed the foreclosure claim, and, how deep they were into debt. Would it be a viable property to approach the person prior to the foreclosure taking place, or should I wait until it goes to foreclosure? The MLS is just the place where realtors go to list properties for sale. Now, places like Zillow, pretty much all they do is give the lay people like you and I access to the MLS. So I think back in the day, now I don't know if what I'm saying is true, but I think back in the day before the internet, there's multiple listing services. There was like the area board of realtors that would keep the MLS. And it would just be like this kind of like an old Sears catalog, but they were all homes, right? So the realtors would go in, figure out what their clients wanted, and come out with properties that, were similar to what might fit their clients, and then physically take them, the clients, to those properties to look at them. Well, now in the advent in the days of the internet, most people have access to the MLS because it just means the properties that are currently for sale. So Zillow, you'll see properties marked pending. It's pending on the MLS. So the MLS is just kind of slang for, not slang, but the MLS is just like an overall broad term to describe all of the properties listed for sale or rent on like the main retail system. PropStream is not that. PropStream has access to the MLS through some sort of like third party, not direct, where they pull the information from the MLS every few days. So a property is likely going to be listed on the MLS before it's listed for sale on PropStream. So I would not rely on PropStream for alerts when new properties go up for sale in your area. However, another cool thing about PropStream is, let's say you go to the county website, you figure out who owns a property, even if the property that they own is not owner occupied, then you're going to be able to get a mailing address for them. A lot of people send postcards and mail, and somebody that has a decent amount of properties, I can tell you that I never look at any single postcard that I ever receive. So I don't think postcards are a decent way to market anymore. PropStream integrates with some skip tracing services. So if you find a property that you're interested in, you can go on PropStream, their mobile app or the desktop version, and you could skip trace that one address, and you could get that person's email address and phone number. So then you could just call them or text them or email them to inquire about the property. So they are two totally different things, and each have their pros and cons. Nice. Man, I can't believe that we have 24 people on here. Thank you. This is a nice college-sized class at this time, which is really exciting. But we're also to the bottom of the comment list. So let me know who's got some questions. Devious and untrustworthy. There is no insurance policy out there that covers crime. So if somebody vandalizes your property, if they are truly devious, mischievous, then it's probably going to be on you. Their renter's insurance likely won't cover the vandalism that they do. Might cover some incidental damages or whatnot. The only thing that you could really proactively do if you are worried about this is force them to purchase renter's insurance with you listed as like an additional interest or additional insured. Other than that, you kind of just have to hope for the best. And then it's more of a reactionary thing, but any damages that they do to your property outside of normal wear and tear, generally you can assess those damages to their account. And in the event that you evict them, you can get a judgment for them for the amount of rent they owe you and also for the damages that they did to the property. You'll just want to keep a record of any sort of invoices or whatnot that you incurred cleaning up their mess after they move out. But if it's before they move out, I would just keep an eye on it. I would look for reasons to start evicting them. Any sort of lease violations that they may or may not do. Do they have pets? Do they have, long-term house guests that they're not supposed to? Are they committing any sort of crime? It really depends on what your lease says and what you're able to evict for. And I'd get them out of there, man. I mean, I tell all of the people that we move in, and I have the guy that does our leasing now, we are looking for people that love this house that we can partner with to keep this house in the best of conditions, for the next 50 to 100 years. We don't believe in deferred maintenance. If there's something that needs to be fixed, we will fix it. It's the best I got. What you're suggesting, so like you cannot buy insurance for anything that is going to happen. You can only buy insurance for things that might happen. I think the majority of people have like a misconception about insurance. Insurance isn't something that you can buy, kind of fix, and transfer all risk to. You can't transfer all risk to anyone because you can't collect no insurance company can collect enough premium for you to hold all of your possible risks. Maxwell Atta, I despise the Burr strategy. And the reason that I strongly dislike it is because the Burr strategy is real estate investing. I have met people that have bought a lot of properties in the 70s. And you know what they did in the 70s? They did the Burr strategy. You know why? Because they invested in real estate. So the Burr strategy is some clever marketing term, super catchy, that Bigger Pockets created that encompasses just about all of real estate investing. So let's go through this. You can buy a property. You can rehab a property. You can rent a property. You can refinance a property. The only thing that's missing that you can do with a property that's not listed in the Burr strategy is sell. So if you added an S to the end of it, then you would successfully encompass all actions inside of real estate investing. If you hold a property for any length of time, then at some point you're going to have completed a Burr property. So what are we really talking about here? Are we talking about investing in real estate? Is that something that I've done? Yes. So the only other thing that you could, make an argument for in the BRRRR strategy is that there's a particular timeline involved, but the timeline is not up to the investor. It's up to the bank, to the lender. If you start trying to implement the BRRRR strategy, you're going to notice that some banks have seasoning requirements. So it's not like as quick as you can buy, rehab, and rent a property, you can then refinance. Some banks have 6-month seasoning requirements. So you have to own the property for 6 months before you can refinance it. Some banks, until you own it for, 2 years, won't give you more than 75% loan to cost. Loan to cost would be your purchase price plus your renovation costs, and they'd give you 75% of those. Consequently, you'd be leaving 25% of your money into that property. Now, of course, there are banks out there that don't have any seasoning requirements, but the only thing that is appealing about the BRRRR strategy is the timeline to a lot of these people. And the timeline is the one thing about real estate investing that is really not up to you. It's up to the lender. He who has the gold makes the rules. So by and large, I think the BRRRR strategy is a really catchy, unrealistic way to get people interested in buying more educational material about real estate investing from the people that created the BRRRR strategy. Ian Clip, I've become aware of the 1031 exchange. Can you explain how that works? Not really. That's one of these tax attorney or tax people questions. The only thing that I know about a 1031 is if you sell a property to avoid the capital gains tax, you can do a 1031 exchange. You've got like 60 to 90 days to identify the property that you want to purchase with those proceeds. And then you have an additional like 6 months to a year to actually close on that property. So you're kind of kicking the can down the road of giving Uncle Sam his money. A 1031 exchange is almost like partnering with the government with the understanding that, hey, we're not going to have you pay us now these taxes that you owe us, because if you keep the money for now and buy something bigger, then in the future, you're going to owe us even more money. So in order to completely alleviate the tax burden of the 1031 exchanges, you're going to want to get into some real nitty-gritty planning with someone a lot smarter and more of an expert in this area to start talking about trusts. Because the last thing that you want is to sell a property way down the road and make no money at all because you partnered with the government via this 1031 exchange too much. So you can probably achieve something similar by messing around with some trusts, some retirement accounts, some self-directed ones, and some fancy CPA attorney people. But hey, Ian Clip, thanks, man. Thanks for being on this live stream. It has been so long since I have seen you comment. And for the other 24 people on this live stream, Ian Clip was one of the first people that I did not know to comment on one of my YouTube videos. So Ian Clip, I'll always remember you, buddy. No, I did when I first got into real estate investing, but then I realized pretty quickly that by owning the real estate, not a share, you're going to make a lot more money. My main beef with the stock markets, the REITs, anything that you do not have positive control over, you will always and forever be like the lowest man on the totem pole, right? You are going to get paid only after everybody else gets paid. I get that REITs have to disperse like 90% or something, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you might be getting a little bit of, interest, some dividends, whatever you want to call it. But, the four main ways are of making money in real estate is, of course, the cash flow, which is the only one that you're getting from the REIT, but you're not getting the appreciation. You're not getting the principal pay down. You're not getting the tax benefits. So any of the money that you make from the REITs is going to be that same capital gains tax. And then, of course, if you own the property, let's say, we just bought a property for 122 grand. Now, this is a home run of a deal. I'm not saying that this is like a replicable thing, but then it appraised for 200 grand. We're going to be able to refinance that eventually. We're going to be able to pull, maybe 50 grand out. That 50 grand that we pull out is going to be, that is not a taxable event. So we're going to have 50 grand in our pockets with 0 taxes to pay on it, because it is the proceeds of debt. It is excess cash, to close or whatever. It's like a cash out refinance. So you can't do stuff like that with stocks or REITs without putting up your stocks or REITs as collateral, which completely different and still lacks the other benefits of how to make money inside of real estate investing. I just bought an acre of land in the county, not far from schools and shops. Any ideas on what I should do with it as an investor? I have no idea. This is very much so out of my wheelhouse. The only thing that I would even remotely suggest is subdividing it and installing the utilities. That's the only thing that I would know what to do. Hello, The Winning Brand. I'm happy to see you back again and again. Can you pull equity if you put less than 20%? Yes, you can, if the property appraises for more. So that's another reason that I say, this BRRRR strategy is a farce, because if you invest for any length of time, then eventually you're going to be able to successfully do this cash out refinance. So if you buy a property for 100 grand and let's say you put 5% down because it's your duplex and you live there, then it's 95,000. Well, I think I said this in one of my early videos, and I don't remember at the moment, but I'm pretty sure the national average of real estate appreciation is 4% per year, which makes sense because the average rate of inflation is 3.22% per year. So really, they're only saying that the value of real estate is increasing by a little bit shy of 1% per year after you adjust for inflation. But who knows what inflation is actually going to be now, because that was the historical average rate of inflation before they started printing money. Anyway, so let's say that you hold it for, I don't want to do too much mental math. So let's say you hold this property for 5 or 10 years. And then because the market increases, now your property is worth, just for easy math, let's say 200,000. But your loan amount is still, let's say now your loan amount is 90,000. You're going to be able to pull out 75% of 200,000, which is 150 grand. So it doesn't matter that you only put down $5,000 when you first bought it. You're going to be able to pull out 150, and then after you pay off your loan of 90,000 because of the principal pay down over those years, so now you're going to walk away from the closing table with $60,000, and you're still going to own the asset that you originally acquired. So you're still going to get the cash flow from your tenants. Yes, your PITI on your mortgage payment will go up a little bit, but at the end of the day, you walked away with $60,000, and you don't have to pay taxes on that money. Thank you, man. Thanks for your input. What are the tax benefits of owning a home when filing your income taxes? Your personal residence, only the interest that you pay on the mortgage, you can deduct that. With rental properties, you've got depreciation. So you can depreciate the entire value of the property over, I think it's 27 and a half years. So if you bought a property for, if you bought a rental property for $100,000,
and you can depreciate it over 27.5, you can write off $3,636 per year from your income. So that's depreciation. That's a strong benefit. And then, of course, any expenses that you incur as a result of that real estate investment is, of course, a write-off. So I'm not a CPA. I still got my disclaimer rolling, so I really don't know, but that's what I would say. It's a control issue with REITs. Well said. Same as MICs. Ian Clip, you've always been smarter than me, man. I don't know what MICs are. Well, what you got? Anything good? We have reached the bottom of the comment section. I'm trying to just check my email really quick to see if I missed any updates on this 20 package property that we're closing later today. The closing is at 11:30. So every time I do a big deal like this, my brain just can't believe it until after I sign all the paperwork. The 36 property refinance that we did in January, even the morning I woke up and I knew that we were going to do that, I just couldn't believe that it was actually going to happen. And I had a tough time believing it even after we closed. So today, I don't think I'm actually going to believe it until I start going around door to door introducing the new management company and ways to do things and how to interact with us. And then I won't really believe it probably until we collect rent of those places the 1st of next month. Mortgage Investment Corporation. There you go. That makes sense. I was thinking about what they call them, DJs, and people making bold statements and dropping them. Nope. 203K loans are for owner-occupied distressed properties, most commonly used for HUD homes because they're already owned by the federal government. So it's kind of a shoe-in on how to get rid of their inventory of properties that were not very much so respected by the previous homeowners. So if we didn't have so many kids, and if I weren't married, then I would most certainly do as many HUD homes and 203K loans as I possibly could. But with the caveat of them, the necessity that they be owner occupied, I just can't move fast enough to make that worthwhile. But if you're just building a portfolio, that's probably a good way to go. And if you don't have many kids and you're able to get one of these, you're able to utilize a 203K loan in an area that you want to have a family, probably a pretty good idea. If I could go back and tell my younger self more things, then I would really, really take advantage of the owner-occupied loans, and I would move once per year while building a portfolio. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't. Oh, man, I completely misread this question. Man. Okay. Oh, I was like, this is such a specific question. I don't know. I don't have a business model revolved around renting to veterans. You're talking about how do I vet renters? That makes a lot more sense. I do know that. That would be very funny if I knew nothing about vetting renters. That would make this entire channel questionable. It's like, this is the very thing that you always talk about, Ryan. Oh boy, I must be getting sleepy. Okay, so our requirements for renting properties from us is you have to make 3 times the rent amount in gross monthly income.
You cannot have any felonies. You cannot have had any misdemeanors in the past 5 years. You cannot have any evictions on your record. And then we have some sort of like collections. Like you can't have more than 2 accounts in collections with balances greater than $500. I don't know that I can't explain this. I don't know why people do what they do, but I am very surprised at the number of accounts in collections with really low balances that people just don't pay. Like, they'll submit an application with proof that they make like, $6-7 grand a month, but yet they've got like 8 accounts in collections for like with balances of like $200 and $300. It must be a pride thing. I don't know. So since it's such a common thing, we don't count accounts that are in collection for lesser than $500. And then for whatever reason, we don't count. I know why. It's just a personal vendetta of mine, but I don't count any accounts in collections for medical expenses. And I mean, we do that from like a background check and a credit pull. And other than that, that's about it. That's how we vet our people. No. I'm looking forward to it making sense to buying or building new properties. But here in our market, when you can buy properties for, 30, 40 grand and put 20, 30 into them and replace pretty much everything on the inside and make them like new, it doesn't make sense to spend 120 to 150 in building a new property. So one day, hopefully the prices are such that we can just start building our rental properties. That would allow us to scale kind of as fast as we wanted to, because we wouldn't have to look for good deals. We would just have to look for vacant land. So yeah, I don't have any experience yet, but I'm looking forward to getting some experience in this. Thanks, Ian. I really appreciate it. Whatever, man. Man, I'm getting some calls. Let's see here. Those are tough. Those are really tough. So if you are going to do this, double, triple, and quadruple check with your insurance company. The last thing you want to do is take on this type of occupancy and then something happen, because when you have a bunch of unrelated adults living in the same place, it really increases the exposure, liability, wear and tear. It's very expensive. So if you are going to rent to some sort of sober living business, then you better be charging above market rents, because they are going to really wear that property. And fires are extraordinarily common amongst properties that have a high number of unrelated adult people living there. So make sure that your insurance is good to go, and make sure that you are really getting a pretty penny for rent. If you're only getting $50 to $100 more per month, I don't think it's worth taking on that exposure. I think so. And I think I'm going to cut this live stream just a little bit short, because since closing is at 11:30, I do not want to accidentally miss any emails that come through pertinent to this closing. So I really appreciate you all being on here. With 25 people on, I feel silly for cutting it short, but I definitely don't want to miss any crucial things, because I definitely want to close on these 20 properties. And once we close on this, it will put our total number of units owned at 130. So I'm pretty pumped about that. So I appreciate you all. Next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard, Friday morning, I will be here, and I hope that you come back and ask some more questions. So thank you. I appreciate you all. And hey, be sure to click on that 7-day free trial for PropStream, especially you, Ian Clip. I know you'll love it. There's PropStream also pulls tons of mortgage information. So you can see, like just by clicking on it, integrates with Google Maps. You could just click on a property and see if it's, owned free and clear, or if there's a mortgage on it. And then if there is a mortgage on it, it will give you, the approximate balance. It's pretty cool. All right. I appreciate it. I will see you all next week. Thanks.